The family of Tyler Robinson may have been shocked when they saw the image of the person of interest who killed Charlie Kirk, and they realized the alleged assassin was their son. But according to the messages that police say the 22-year-old sent to a friend online, he wasn't hiding that he was an alleged political killer. What he said to that friend and how it fits into what police have against a man who is expected to face the death penalty if found guilty. We're on the case, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Tyler Robinson appears to have left plenty of evidence behind after he allegedly shot and killed Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University. You of course have the physical evidence, the high-powered bolt-action rifle found in a wooded area off campus and the bullet casings with anti-fascist song lyrics and deep internet and video game references engraved on them. But then you have what Robinson allegedly sent to his roommate in messages on Discord that appears to show that Tyler Robinson was not hiding that he had allegedly done this crime. Before I get to that part, the Discord messages, let's get to what really broke this case wide open. It was perhaps as a result of this picture. The alleged shooter wearing an American flag shirt, sunglasses, a hat with a triangle logo on it, and Converse shoes with white soles. Now, at this point, when this picture was first released, he was just a person of interest. We didn't know who it was, but take a look at this picture of Tyler Robinson appearing to be a typical college kid in his dorm, smiling, wearing a similar hat, but also look at his feet. Converse shoes with white soles. Now imagine you're his family and you see the image of the person of interest, and then you look at your son and you realize he's the alleged killer. According to police, Tyler's dad confronted his son about that possibility and whether he was responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk, and Tyler allegedly confessed. His dad then called a youth pastor, and they transported Tyler to the police station where this 22-year-old may now never see the light of day as a free man ever again, and if found guilty, he will face the death penalty, according to Utah Governor Spencer Cox. Robinson's family said that in recent years he became more political. That's according to police documents, but we need to know more about that because it's unclear what they meant by more political. And how specifically was he more political? How does someone go from maybe not being into politics to then being allegedly on a roof with a sniper rifle shooting someone who you disagree with politically? Family members said that recently Robinson was at dinner and spoke about how Charlie Kirk was going to be at Utah Valley University on September 10th for his college speaking tour. He also talked about how he did not like Charlie Kirk's beliefs. Now, we don't know specifically what he said about that and whether anything was particularly threatening related to his thoughts on Charlie Kirk. In pictures, Tyler Robinson seems like he had experience handling guns to at least some extent. He also seemed to play a lot of video games. One of the inscriptions on the unfired casings that was found was related to a third-person shooter game. He also was on Discord, which is an instant messaging platform that is often used by people who play video games, and this is where we see the messages that Robinson allegedly sent to someone who police refer to as his roommate. It's unclear whether it was his college roommate or if he was living somewhere else. Robinson did spend a semester at Utah State University, we learned. Now, police contacted that roommate, and the roommate showed them messages that Tyler allegedly sent him. The affidavit reads that Tyler stated he needed to, quote, retrieve a rifle from drop point, leaving the rifle in a bush, messages related to visually watching the area where a rifle was left, and a message referring to having left the rifle wrapped in a towel. The messages also refer to engraving bullets and a mention of a scope and the rifle being unique. Messages from that contact Tyler also mentioned that he had changed outfits. End quote. Now, those details appear to match with the evidence that police found, like the gun in the wooded area just off of campus where they saw that person of interest run through. It is unclear what Robinson has said to investigators since his arrest. Joining us now is retired NYPD Detective Tom Smith. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. Let's talk about this suspect a little bit now that we're learning more about him. Just initially, what are your impressions of Tyler Robinson, 22 years old?
Yeah, Chris, it's kind of what we were expecting. He's a young kid who got influenced and wrapped into the social media discord of fighting against free speech and not liking what you are hearing. So their default mechanism and the default button is violence. And this is just another example of that, of having the inability just to talk, just to hear someone else's opinion, and taking it to heart and taking it to an extreme violent level that took Charlie Kirk's life. And it's hard to say to you that it's what we expected, but I'm just being truthful. I mean, I don't think any of us, once he got arrested and saw, the background so far of what he's involved in, are surprised. And that's the sad part of this.
It is, because we've talked about, school shootings, and in some ways this is a school shooting because it happened on a college campus. I mean, it was a political assassination as well. And I know in your career you've investigated threats against schools, and it seems like there's this profile. He was 22 years old. He was on Discord, which seems to come up a lot in these. The engravings on the bullets, I had to, look up what all of this stuff, what it meant. I know one of them was a song that related back to World War II, but then there's also these like internet memes on the corners of the internet, and it kind of just fits this profile that we see in a lot of ways. Now the question I think becomes like, okay, police say he became more political in recent years. There's a huge difference between suddenly being engaged in whatever politics you want and then being a sniper on the roof, taking someone out like he did. How do you figure out exactly how it got to that point?
It's hard to do, but you know how you figure it out? The people around him paying attention to the little things he might have let out over the last month or so. There's a point of having a conversation around a kitchen table about something maybe you don't agree with or you disagree with in the political world. And then there's a rhetoric of danger, of violence that might come out. And those are the things that people need to pay attention to. I say it all the time. Violence stops because someone else hears it or someone else sees it and brings it to the attention of someone. The more we go on with this and the story comes out more, I guarantee you're going to see more little crumbs that were left out that this guy was on a path to do something violent.
It's interesting because it appears he left the rifle behind. And then you would think in some of those stories that you're like, okay, I did this, here's the breadcrumb, come and find me. Almost like taunting police when someone leaves something like that behind. But then he goes into hiding, almost trying to live his regular life till the pictures come out, escapes back down to the St. George area of Utah. What do you make of the fact that there was evidence left behind, but then at the same time, he was still trying to cover himself, at least for the 33 hours that he was at large?
Well, I think the evidence left behind is inexperience. He's not a criminal. He's not a professional criminal. And what I mean by that is you get wrapped up in the moment that he was in. Yes, a horrible act. He did it, and he starts to flee. They can have a plan of getting out of an area, but then it gets wrapped up in emotion, in scared, in all that, and it overwhelms them. I'm thinking along the lines of him carrying the weapon away from that scene and not dropping it on the roof was an instinct. And then when he got in the woods and almost went towards the community that he had to run through, he realized he still had the gun with him and dropped it. I really think that's what happened. He just got wrapped up in the plan of getting out of there and just instinctively carried this weapon with him and then just dropped it because he went, oh my God, I can't run home with this. I can't get it out of here the way I got it in my pants leg. So I think it was just a moment of realization of, let me get rid of this, and dropped it. And then to get out of that area, was paramount to him. And then once he did, you go through levels of reality of what you just did, of, that's going to be a range of emotion. He had 4 hours to drive home and think about all that.
Yeah, and you think about that drive and the fact that he was able to get there. And I think in some ways, because at times, as a member of the media, I always like when they put pictures out. It gives us, content to put out and can be something that can help in an investigation. But I know on your side of it, when you were in law enforcement, that it's something you have to make a decision about whether or not you want to put that picture out there and what that could mean for an investigation. But in this case, it seems like it really worked because a family member saw that and they were like, that is Tyler Robinson.
Right. And I've said this over the past couple of days. Law enforcement will run their investigation the way they want and try to get them any way they can. But it gets to a point where, even law enforcement, the most, decorated and experienced detectives in the world sometimes run into a roadblock and you can't get past that. So you need the public's help, because I've said this a million times, Chris, the police can't be everywhere, but the public can be. And to get that image out there, someone was going to know him. A friend, a family member, in this case is what it ended up being, but someone's going to know him. The police can't be everywhere, but someone, in the way the media works today, was going to recognize him. And I think the police and the FBI played it perfectly with waiting till they could just do it, on their own, and then letting out the images that they had, which broke the case.
And I think too, very difficult, I'm sure, for his dad. And that's saying, there's probably no words for having to turn your own son in and coming to the realization that your son is the person who did this. Allegedly, he'll go through the legal process and we'll see how it all plays out. But at the same time, for people, if they had looked at that picture and they said, that's definitely Tyler Robinson, and they didn't come forward, would that have opened them up to potentially being arrested if later found? How does that typically handle when you're trying to figure out if who might have known this? Because it does seem in this case it worked out and everybody was honest, bringing him forward, even members of his own family.
Yeah, if someone just recognizes him, we're never going to know that. There could be 10 people right now who recognized him but are afraid to give up a friend or get involved in all that. And you see that every day, that people just don't want to make that step and get involved. But if you're harboring him, if you take him into your house, if you help in getting him away or hiding him, that's a totally different charge, a totally different world that they would be wrapped up in. And that's when you get into trouble. But just seeing it, that we're probably not going to know. But like you just said, Chris, the thought of his father watching the news and just getting an update on what happened and hearing the news, oh, we have some images that we're going to release to the public, and seeing that it's your son, I can't even describe what that must have felt like for him.
And what the car ride, I know he called a youth pastor, and they brought him to police headquarters because that it is likely, if all of this is true, he's never going to see the light of day as a free man ever again at 22 years old, but certainly took the life of Charlie Kirk, allegedly, who was 31 years old. When you look at how that happened, and I'm not a gun owner myself, Tom, but I know it was 150 to 200 yards, this shot that was done. There are pictures of Tyler Robinson where it seems like he was familiar with firearms. Based on what we know with this high-powered bolt-action rifle with a scope, how much training would you need or practice would you need to do the type of shot that he did?
With the type of scope that is being out there that he used, not that much, Chris. You could go a couple of times and practice with it. If you hunt once, 2, 3 times a year, you could get familiar with that weapon. He was in a prone location or prone position, no one around him, laying down with that high-powered scope. It's actually, disappointing to say, but not that hard of a shot if you're familiar with that weapon, which he was. So it made the shot even easier for someone like him.
And you look at where Charlie Kirk was, and I know a lot of this story, now that the suspect is done and will continue on, is the question of how does this happen? Clearly this is a political event. It's dangerous. If you're Charlie Kirk or whatever political person you are, you have become a target in ways that maybe you weren't a couple of years ago, and he certainly was. He seems like he was in this outdoor amphitheater on campus, a very vulnerable position. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions for security, but how difficult is it in these outdoor venues, especially like this, where it seems like he's in the lower ground, to actually be able to secure that area?
It's hard when you have, on these college campuses, here's what they faced. You had 3,000 people there. Charlie Kirk has his own security team, but his own security team is concerned about him. If you noticed in the video, they're surrounding him to make sure no one charges at him or, there's nothing dangerous thrown at him. They had 6 campus police officers on duty. That you're not going to cover 3,000 people. And that's the difficult part of these venues. He's not the president of the United States where you have an entire Secret Service contingent, both on the ground and in the air, covering that event. You're talking about a minimum amount of people who have to cover a large area. And probably because of this, Chris, these venues are going to rethink the way police officers are deployed, who's covering it, the amount of people they allow into the event. And I think the one thing you're going to see, and you would have thought it would have happened after Butler, you're going to see a lot more drone usage at these outdoor venues. Because until they do that and start covering every aspect of these areas, you're not going to be safe. And the biggest part is the high spot where these people, these shooters have been at the last 2 times. So the use of drones is going to have to be stepped up and financed and budgeted, whatever they have to do. But that's got to be something that changes.
Yeah, because even, I have the untrained eye, and you look at some of the videos that have been circulating of people who are like, hey, is that someone on the roof ahead of time? And it's still difficult to see because he's dressed in black and the roof is black, and it just seems like without a drone, it would be hard to spot somebody on the roof like that. It seems too, there was just especially when you think of engraving all these different sayings on pieces of ammunition, that there's just a lot of planning that went into this. When it comes to the investigation that's going to continue right now, what are you looking into now that he's in custody, but trying to figure out, and I know they said that they believe he acted alone, but what are you looking for at this point as you build the case?
Well, the case already started to get built, and that's a great point you bring up. The second that law enforcement gets on the scene of a crime scene, the prosecutorial part and evidence collection leading to a possible case in the DA's office starts. You have to start building a case, even if you don't have the individual yet, of preserving evidence and preserving interviews and doing everything the correct way. So in the event like this, when you get them, everything is still good. So the planning for his capture started immediately with the preservation of evidence. But going forward now, you're going to do a absolute complete deep dive into everything this kid owns. You're going to do search warrants in cars, rooms, houses, anything he might have been involved in and touched. His social media, his electronic devices are going to be ripped apart. And anything that leads to anybody else or conversations or planning or anything like that is going to be found. And that's why they do it. They're going to go absolutely, from 0 to 100 into everything that he owns.
And when it comes to his social media, because I know often that's going to open the door to a lot of understanding motive, and if he had said anything about, I know he was aware Charlie Kirk was going to be at Utah Valley University, but as far as whether he had said that he was going to do what he allegedly did, on the surface, when it says, oh, they're just scanning through social media, it's easy to say that. What does that actually look like? Because I feel like that would be, if you're going back years, where he started to be politically involved, and if he was active on all these platforms, that feels like it is a lot of tedious work to figure out every single thing he said online for multiple years.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot. Make no mistake about it. But what they'll do is they'll go from one, check out a post of something he might have posted about Charlie or about any actions that he didn't, agree with, and then see who commented on that. Hey, brother, I'm with you. Why don't we meet up? You're going to go through messages that people responded to some of the things that he said. You're going to see other groups maybe that he was hitting up or friends with or followed or anything like that, and look into them to make sure that there was no conspiracy here with any other groups or any other people. So it is very tiring to go through, their social media platforms. We've had to do it numerous times when I was working. And that's where you have the best analysts in the world going through it who know that world and know algorithms and know how things work, and to go through what's hitting and what's popular into what he's hitting on. So there's a lot that's still going to be done with this. Even though you caught him, the investigation is still going to go forward.
And the gun that was found, and that was at the FBI's crime lab, when a gun's analyzed, what are they particularly looking for? Because I know it's still unclear exactly how he got it.
Yeah, they're going to go through, the first thing you're going to look for is any prints that are on it. You're going to look for then any DNA that might be on it, any unusual markings that may lead to the identification of it, or any transfers or sales of that item. So that's what they're going to go through, and that's what they did. They had a clear line from Utah to the crime lab at Quantico with airplanes, with helicopter, whatever they needed to transfer stuff back and forth as rapidly as they can. I mean, from having nothing to then 36 hours later having him in custody is a great accomplishment for the FBI and the local law enforcement. But it took them all doing it and getting all these pieces together to get him.
Right, and that was going to be my last question, because Brian Kohberger took weeks to arrest him. I think of Luigi Mangione, that took days. This took less than 2 days. And it didn't seem like they had a lot of leads, at least publicly, in the beginning, and they're able to find this guy. I mean, just for those of us also who probably take things for granted, how much of an accomplishment is that to do it as quickly as they did?
Oh, it's tremendous. It's not, I said it earlier on a show, it's not TV. It's not done in an hour. It's not done in a half hour. To get someone like this with absolutely zero in the beginning of this in 36 hours is tremendous. And I think, like I said before, they did it right. You got it to a point and then you hand it over to the public. And you entice the public to help them and to help law enforcement, get the guy who just committed that everyone, well, not everyone, there's some lunatics out there who think this was a good thing, but the majority of people in this country, found a heinous act and wanted to help and wanted to get this person in custody, and they did. But it was, I think, the leadership of Kash Patel and the FBI in allowing them to just, hey, no one's going home. Everyone's staying here until we get this guy. And that kind of leadership, when you're out there for days or a day and a half, 2 days, not sleeping and not eating, but having the back of your supervisors to do your job, makes 36 hours possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly impressive, very sad week. You think of just, Charlie Kirk, even if you disagreed with him, you could have gone to a microphone and debated him, and that was what he was doing publicly. And you just wonder now, with the security concerns, like how many other people who would at least be transparent to have that debate. Again, you could say whatever you want to Charlie Kirk, but how does that change how these events look going forward? To your point with the public as well, I know they said last night that the volume within just the first couple of hours was something they hadn't seen since the Boston Marathon bombing when it came to the volume of messages coming in. We'll see where this case goes from here. Tom Smith, retired NYPD detective, always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Always a pleasure, Chris. Thanks for having me.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.